Heyo, welcome back to Thoughts and Opinions Are Our Own. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Kirk.
Kirk?
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about music lately.
Music, yes.
Especially Van Halen. I've seen videos of him just tapping away on the guitar, specifically in Jump. And then there's a rumor he's in Beat It with Michael Jackson.
So Eddie Van Halen, yep.
Okay.
Eddie Van Halen, who I consider, in my opinion, the most talented, skilled, gifted guitarist in the history of rock and roll.
Wow.
And I know that's saying a lot, but I know people go, oh no, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page.
The GOAT, the greatest of all
in
time.
my mind, he's better than Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, B.B. King,
Snap,
Chuck Berry, Eric Clapton. So
okay.
And I love Eddie. He was, but you were right. He was in the band Van Halen. He and his brother Alex, who was the drummer, started the band a long time ago in the 70s. And then, in the 80s, they had that number one hit. Jump was, I think, their only number one hit actually on the U.S.
We tried to get it.
Yes. Well,
for legal reasons.
Yes, for legal reasons, we couldn't play in the background. But you're right.
Just go to YouTube. It's great.
Yeah, YouTube. And then you're right. He played the solo. He was the solo guitarist in Michael Jackson's song "Beat It."
Now he's not in the video. But
he's not in the video, but you can hear his solo.
That's
it's Eddie.
Cool.
And it was obviously in my mind.
And he just taps it. He doesn't strum it.
In my mind, again, the way he plays guitar, his obviously the speed, but also the melody, the notes the creativity that he had, and how he did the two-hand tapping and really changed guitar. And then of course, the big names, like, oh gosh, how is he doing it? Well, I got to follow him too. I got to copycat him. So
he trailblazed.
He was way ahead of his time. But it's an interesting story because I was able to see them, Van Halen, live in summer of 1995.
Great year, of course.
Great year when you were born, of course. And but a friend of mine from my buddy Chad from Indianapolis, Indiana, he called me up in the summer of 95. He's like, hey, Van Halen's coming to the local amphitheater. It was an outdoor gig in the summertime there in Indianapolis. He's like, do you want to come down? I'll get us tickets, because Chad was a fan of Van Halen too. So I went down there. It was a great concert. The only time I was able to see them live.
Awesome.
But it was interesting because as we were in line to get in with the tickets and everything, they had security and everything. But they also had they had these cardboard boxes on the side for the fans to come in and donate non-perishable food, cans for the homeless there in Indianapolis. And I thought, oh, this is they're, giving back to the community. This is their charity. I didn't actually bring a can that night, but I know, well, it was, okay.
What?
So, but I thought, what, good for Van Halen. They're trying to, they're more than just, rock and roll. They're actually trying to give back to, again, each town. I think it was the whole tour in 95.
What's it called? Philanthropist?
Yeah, you're giving back. Exactly. Yeah. You're giving back. Again, you realize you have a really good life, living, a millionaire for, rock music. And so there are probably people, less fortunate than you, who are every city where you go to, there's probably a homeless shelter or people who are hungry. And so one of the interviews that I saw with Eddie, he said that tour in particular was, they decided to do that because they realized when they were on stage then, later on in the evening, that food was actually being delivered to people who are hungry. And so people were actually having dinner late at night, with the food that the fans brought while Van Halen is performing. So I thought, what, good for Eddie for having some kind of social conscience and giving back. But also I was going to bring up that Eddie has an interesting kind of backstory because he, obviously was very successful here in America and internationally, but he was born in Amsterdam, Netherlands.
What?
Yes.
He's not from the great U.S.
Is not. He was not born in the U.S. He and Alex were both born.
We love the Netherlands.
Yes, the Netherlands. Yes,
Holland.
The Holland. Yep. And
love to go there.
Yep,
someday.
We're going to visit. Hopefully.
Shout out to our listeners all the way over there.
There you go. But so the story goes, when he was a young guy, 7, 8 years old, his dad had some relatives who had already moved over here to America, and they, I guess, wrote back to him and said, hey, listen, you really got to come over to America. There's, it's a bigger country, land wise, and, live the American dream. You really can provide probably better than you are now. And so, again, nothing against the Netherlands.
We love the Netherlands.
Yes, we love the Netherlands. So anyhow, so the story goes, they got in a boat and they had to get all the documentation, the paperwork, and sell, their house or whatever, and get the passports figured out. And,
yeah.
And so again,
we've had to do that.
We've had to do that in the 21st century. That this is back in so he was born in the 50s. This is probably in the early 60s was when they came over to, and then they, they found a home in California. So, but I was also thinking about passports And it does take now in 21st century, I don't know what it was like in the 1960s, but for him and his family. But now, I mean, I had to recently get a passport.
Sure.
And it's, you got to figure out the paperwork and get the picture. And then you got to wait in the mail and they deliver it to you like 2 months. I mean, there's a lot of like dot your I's and cross your T's. But it gets you access, obviously, then to travel into other countries and other cultures. And I was thinking about like in the Bible, I think it's the
nice little Jesus spin. I like that.
Yes, well,
we're the cool Christians.
The cool Christians. I think it's the earliest documentation of someone using a quote unquote passport or written documentation to gain access from traveling from like one country or one region to the other. And I think you've got it. I think it's in Nehemiah chapter 2. Is that right?
Yeah. So Nehemiah 2, starting at verse 7, it said, I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governor of Euphrates, so that they will provide me safe travel until I travel in Judea. And then I skip down to 8, and it says, and because the gracious hand of my God was on me, the king granted my request. And then in verse 9 it says, so I went to the governor of Euphrates and gave them the king's letters. The king had also sent army officers and cavalry with me. So I guess when he's talking about the king's letters, he's talking about like passport and documentation.
Yes, to get that
that's really cool.
That written documentation, because it gets you access. And so when soldiers, access. Yes, it gets you access. When soldiers come in and say, "Why are you traveling?" or "Why are you on this road?" or "Why do you approach? Yeah. Why do you approach our palace or our kingdom or whatever?
Our governor.
Or our governor. Yeah. Why are you going to try to talk to the king or the governor? You can say, listen, I have written documentation right here, like the passport is, like, hey, this says legally I can travel from one area to another, from one region to the next. And so
that's cool that Van Halen had to do that.
And so Eddie, again, I'm guessing his family had to do that back in when he was younger, 1960s. But also, it's interesting because we're recording this in the fall of 2021. Sadly, just almost exactly to the day a year ago in the fall of 2020, Eddie passed away. And I know he lived, the rock and roll, lifestyle. I know he did some things, to his body that, he probably caught up to him at the end. And so kind of sad.
Rock and roll maybe a little too hard.
The rock and roll lifestyle. But again, he was so talented, so gifted. And I remember a year ago, like almost the day exactly when it happened. And somebody texted me, hey, in fact, you know who it was? It was my buddy Chad. No, true story. It was my buddy Chad, although he's not in Indiana.
The guy that you saw.
Yes, he's like, hey man. Well, again, he's a big fan. He's like, he texted me. He's like, hey man, I just heard Eddie Van Halen passed away. So sure enough, I went on. I went online. Like, it's actually he did pass away. I knew I think he was battling cancer for a while.
Oh my gosh, this gets sad.
So later that day, next day or two, I was teaching tennis at my local rec center that I teach tennis classes at, and one of my, I like the little kids at whatever, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, then the adults come in at 7 or 8 o'clock. And I remember one of the adults said, hey, Kirk, and she was a rock and roll, pop culture fan too. She's like, hey, Kirk, I know you like Van Halen. You've mentioned that before in passing. Did you know Eddie just passed away? And I said, yes. And we were kind of picking up balls. We were talking about Eddie and music and rock and roll and, what he did to rock and roll and how great of an artist he was. And I told her, I said I was able to, go see him live that one time. And he was one of my all-time favorite, musicians and guitarists. And I looked up at her and I looked at the group. I got really deep and philosophical. And I said, well, no, this is true. And I said to her, during tennis, I said, you know what? I said, Eddie lived kind of a tough life and things caught up to him. But I said, I really hope at the end, like if he knew that he was about to pass away, I really hope he made peace with his maker, with God.
That is very deep.
And when I said that, I'm like, wow, that just kind of came out of me. But Jordan, I know it's deep and it's serious. And I think everybody, on the planet has to, when they get towards the end of their life here on planet Earth, whether they know they're, about to pass away or if it's, even if it's sudden and, they got a few minutes to go like, okay, well, this is it then. I really do. I really hope everyone makes peace with God somehow before they enter eternity. And I know as you mentioned before, the Christian faith, obviously we believe that Jesus was born, he lived here for 33 years. He was crucified on Good Friday. It's a salvation message and he arose on Easter Sunday. And we believe that.
Sure.
Do you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Do you believe,
classic John 3:16.
John 3:16, for God so loved the world. So
everyone knows that.
But also there's another verse I think it's in Matthew, and it's where God is looking at people who
Judgment Day.
yeah,
right?
it's kind of judgment day. And it's like, and I think you have the scriptures there. So go ahead and read it in Matthew chapter 25.
Yeah, so starting at verse 31, it says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then I skip down to verse 41, and he says, then he will say to those on his left, for I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or sick, or in prison, and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me.
I think that's right there. That's that key phrase, because
that's such like a kick to the gut.
It's, well, again, this is challenging. This is challenging people, and especially Christians. It's like, yes, again, did you turn your life over to God? Did you repent of your sins? Did you ask Jesus into your heart?
As a Christian, you should grow and give.
Yes, but as a Christian, you're right. It's not just, you don't just stop with John 3:16.
Right.
You have to continue living your life and mature then as a...
And love on others.
Yes,
serve on
and follow
others,
the Ten Commandments. And I think right there, but that challenges what you've done to the least of these, or what you didn't do to the least of these. I think if you've been a good Christian, if you've tried to live your life as God has asked you to, if you do those verses, you'd be like, yep, I did. I tried. I really tried to look out for people, as he says, the least of these. So again, as Van Halen did in 1995, giving back.
He figured it out. Even Hollywood figures it out. Charities.
They start out charities. They start out foundations. And hopefully, if they're doing it with their pure heart, because they realize, their time on this planet is going to come to an end.
Yeah.
And just in case there really is a God and the Bible really is true, I better make sure, and not that they're buying their way into heaven, but I better make sure that I'm good with God. Like I've made peace with God. And so again, we believe in the salvation message, but we also believe in this passage in Matthew. You have to be nice. You have to give back to other people who, again, what God says to the least of these. And I know you like the whole pay it forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of classic. You're in the drive-thru. I don't know what it's like in other countries, but here in the U.S., when you're in the drive-thru, it's called pay it forward.
Yeah.
So you pay for the person behind you. So I don't know what the person behind me is going through. Maybe they're having a good morning. Maybe they're not. Usually I'm in Starbucks, in the morning. Should I be? I could save my money a little bit, but I don't know what they've had in the morning. Right. Hopefully, they've had a good morning. If not, they're there trying to get caffeinated before they head into work, and maybe, me paying it forward, maybe that helps them. They save a couple extra bucks here. Or, in the afternoon, when we're all there for a little pick me up because, we're tired. Maybe they didn't have a good morning. Maybe they didn't have a good afternoon. Maybe they can end their night on a good night or their afternoon on a good afternoon. Or maybe they're having a great day and I don't know that. Maybe they've had one of the best days ever. And maybe this is just an extra cherry on top, an extra DVD feature.
Yes.
As you mentioned, it is October as we're recording this, and we're going to get ready to head into the holiday season. And you see Santa Claus everywhere, ringing his little bell at the grocery store. Yeah. I think at that time, a lot of people are reminded oh yeah, now it is a good time to give back.
Yeah.
But I think, you should be giving back 365 days. You should give January, February, March, April, May, January through December, not just the holiday season. You should be giving year round. And I think people forget that sometimes.
That's a good challenge, Jordan. Again, it's good to be a Christian. It's good to surrender your life and your heart to God, but it just doesn't stop there. You
have to go the extra mile.
You can't be a selfish Christian.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
And expect God to honor that. You have to look out for others.
You. That's right. Others.
That's right. You have to give back. You have to help other people. Because there's 8 billion
and he'll
people.
Call you out, as the scripture says. He'll
says
call you out.
You don't, that's right. If you don't give back, if you don't help other people, that's not cool with God. And if you really want a passport, going back to the passport with Van Halen,
get the right documentation.
You want to get the right documentation because God is watching us. Obviously, dotting his I's, crossing his T's. Did Kirk do this? Did Jordan do this? There was a person in need. Did they help them out? Did they stop and help them? And I know that's kind of a theme with some of our podcasts is helping other people in need.
Definitely.
And so again, this is a challenge. It's always a good reminder to you and me, but also to our listening audience. are we doing the best that we can, but also are we giving back to other people who might not have what we have? Does that make sense?
Wow, that is incredible. I think this was a
There you
great
go.
podcast for sure. I don't know about you guys listening there. I feel challenged. Dad, you for sure have challenged me.
Well,
I'm
there you go.
inspired by Van Halen and Jesus, of course.
Yes.
All right. Well, there you go. Maybe you should donate to someone. Maybe you should pay for the person behind you, whether
Yep.
you're in McDonald's, Wendy's, Starbucks. Maybe you should watch Van Halen on Jump. I don't know.
There you go.
All right. Have a good one.
God bless you, Eddie Van Halen. Rock and roll.